the 70s, comics were in trouble. There was a silly attitude in comics when I came into it in the 70s. There was a comic called Jet, for example, which had a serial called Sergeants 4. I'm embarrassed to even repeat it. An Englishman, Irishman, Scotsman and Welshman. And they were doing things like tying knots in tank barrels. That's the kind of nonsense that was going on. But the guy who was at the helm here was actually a World War II veteran for whom I'd have enormous respect for his military career. He'd been at Arnhem, but that wasn't reflected in the stories. The stories were silly and people wanted reality. So when we came along and did Battle Comic, where some of the stories at least were, reasonably well researched and so on, and this is what kids wanted. It was quite revolutionary because we were actually, I suppose, treating readers with respect and saying, this is what might have happened at this point in the war and so forth. And anything that looked stupid, kids really didn't like, even when a story was actually factually correct. If it had an element of what they saw as something naff, they would be quite shrill in criticising it. So there was a survey done once on comics, I think round about the very early 80s, end of the 70s, where they were actually asking kids about this. And one of them picked up my Charley's War, which featured a scene during a poison gas attack where dogs and horses going around wearing gas masks, which of course they did. And he said, look, this is why I don't like comics, because they're stupid. Look at this is stupid, a dog wearing a gas mask. I have a lot of sympathy with him because I know what he's reacting to, the silly stuff that went on in comics, certainly in the early 70s, and was still around by this time. Well, certainly I was, and other notable writers were researching our stories. Research was seen as a dirty word. Well, you're weird. Why don't you just knock out anything? Kids aren't going to care. That was the attitude. Kids aren't going to care. Yes, they bloody are. And they like to see the things absolutely correct. So there was a lot of this kind of turbulent energy going on beneath the surface, as if you like the comic revolution continued.